Time to talk Buckeyes with all of you here at the Voice of College Football. We do this each and every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Appreciate you stopping by. Pull up for the next 60. We're talking Buckeyes, past, present, and future. Of course, it's the NFL Draft on Thursday night. And I forget the location. Kevin, the location of the draft this year. Detroit, yes. From Detroit. And Steve joining us as well. Bucknuts, 247 Sports. You can catch Kevin's work, of course, at BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Big Me podcast. So Kevin, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to have to wait too long, I don't think. What is the latest we're hearing, top 5 to 10?
Yeah, I think that 4 to Arizona makes a lot of sense, but every year they have the contest to pick the first round correctly and win a zillion dollars, and nobody can because you can't estimate what GMs are going to do. There could be a run on quarterbacks. Somebody could certainly try to move up. I know that people have been kicking the tires on Las Vegas at 2, but that shouldn't have anything to do with changing Marvin Harrison Jr.'s status there. We've gone through the silly season of misinformation, and a lot of people are trying to say that Marvin may not even be the first receiver taken off the board. I think that's kind of part of the silly season, but you just don't know. Marvin went about the process a little bit differently than others. Didn't work out at the combine, didn't work out at his pro day, didn't do a lot of things, but I think 4 to Arizona really makes sense. And sorry, Tony, he's not going to be there at 9 for your Bears.
That's why the Bears are going to trade up, duh. Just trade up, trade next year's first, go up to number 4, grab him, unless they love Roma Dunze or whatever, and then that's fine. It is what it is. I'm ready to move on from the Justin Fields era to whatever happens with the Bears now.
I see the Bears are going to build a $4 billion indoor stadium on the lakefront there. I think after they've paid everybody off, that they're going to, including, all the aldermen and all that, it's probably going to be about 9 or 10 billion, I would think, after all the payoffs are properly bestowed. But hey, we'll get Big Ten championship game and Final Fours in the Windy City one day. So that's what we got to look forward to.
I'd rather just keep everything in Indianapolis.
Yeah, makes life a lot simpler.
Tony jumping in from Buckeye Huddle and the Buckeye Weekly podcast as well. And yes, Tony, Caleb Williams right off the top. That's pretty obvious. So that's your new quarterback.
Yeah, I thought 2022, he was the best player in the country, won the Heisman, and really had some difficulties last year, wasn't able to take USC to where they thought they could go, which makes me wonder, what is USC going to be without him? If he can only get them how far he got them, what is Miller Moss or whoever going to be able to do? But yeah, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is at Chicago if they don't support him, if they don't put people around him, if they don't have a plan, if they don't have coaches that stay there longer than 3 or 4 years, who are good enough to stay there longer than 3 or 4 years. If Caleb Williams can have the same coordinator and same head coach for the first 4 years of his contract, maybe he'll get that 5th year picked up. We'll see.
Buckeye fans, let us know in the chat, and college football fans, because we've got D-Rock Irish and others, of course, repping other college football fan bases. Do you care about the NFL draft? Do you care how well your school is represented in the NFL draft and how successful those players are in the NFL? Because based on the responses we typically get here, there's a large majority of fans that are like, see ya, don't care where you get drafted, don't care how successful you are, unless maybe you become Tom Brady, and then we'll take you back and we'll claim you now again.
Yeah, I can tell you based on just traffic numbers on websites, it's a mixed lot of who cares about the NFL draft. I love the NFL draft, and I've written stories already about it and have some stuff already in the can for when players get drafted. But I think people in general care when their favorite players go on and do something. When CJ Stroud went and won Offensive Rookie of the Year, everybody suddenly was all about that. But yeah, I think this is a draft that is easy to overlook. There are 9 Buckeyes who are quote unquote draft eligible. I think 6 is kind of a reach goal as to how many will get drafted. As we know, getting drafted in the 7th round, sometimes you're better going in as an undrafted free agent and having a chance to make your own pick at that point. But this was supposed to be the monster Ohio State draft. And then a funny thing happened. Everybody decided to come back to school to run it back one more time. So next year when the draft is in Green Bay, I think we will all find all of the local haunts in Green Bay because we will all have to go cover that one because of what that one's going to look like. But I think this one is going to be a little bit more of an understated draft if you're an Ohio State fan. Ohio State's had 6 players drafted in each of the last 2 classes. Again, I think 6 is a reach goal at this point. We ran a little poll over at Buckeye Huddle, and it was between 4 and 6 where people were expecting. But yeah, I'm gonna be watching it, but I guarantee you, come Saturday, it's just gonna be kind of on as background noise because if the guys who are announcing the draft aren't paying attention or are asking each other about what they had for lunch and everything else, why should I be expected to pay attention to all of that?
Well, it's interesting because that Saturday for media watching it, it's just you're watching it to see one. Okay, did an Ohio State guy go yet? So I can post a story about him getting drafted, and that's really what you're paying attention to. But I grew up loving the draft and always looking forward to it. We didn't have cable until like high school, so I would go to like a relative's house to watch the draft. Then after college, like I was one of those sickos. Me and a buddy would go to a bar and ask them to turn the draft on when it was all day, and I'd be like, "You want to watch the what?" And it's like, "Yes, we want to watch the draft, please." And sure, we drank. And it wasn't just about the draft; it was also about the drafts, if you will. But yeah, always loved the draft, and I think always will. It's just another aspect of sports. It's another sports holiday. It's March Madness. It's first opening day. That sort of thing where they're just these bold days and calendars, and this is one of them.
Well, the Browns don't have any picks because of Deshaun Watson, and reminds me. I tell this story all the time. I was at an AAU tournament up in Kent, in the Akron-Kent area. I'm driving by a bar on one of the side streets on Saturday, and I think the draft used to only be Saturday, Sunday. I think this is way back. First round, the Browns didn't even have a pick that year. There's 2 Browns fans, head to toe Browns regalia in their jerseys, etc., for the first round of the draft, standing outside the bar having a cigarette, just ready to go for the draft, but no pick for their team. So there you go.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was in southern Georgia driving back toward Ohio on a recruiting trip, and I'm such a sicko. I was listening to the draft on the radio. I had the satellite radio, and I was listening to NFL radio, and the late Gil Brandt was making a lot of comments that were not sensical because he'd lost his fastball by that point. And I'm arguing with nobody in the car at the radio over the comments he's making over a backup defensive end from Troy and things of that nature. So that's how far I get into this. I will say that the people that have dedicated themselves to covering the draft, that is their thing. They are a special breed because it is a lot. I have a hard time keeping track of 85 scholarship players at Ohio State. For them to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players, not only in the current draft, but already working ahead toward the next draft. Hats off to you guys because and gals because it is a massive undertaking.
I'm just glad it's no longer taking place during the spring game, which has happened in the past. A few years back when like the second day of the draft or whatever would be on first day, whenever would be during the spring game. So you're watching the spring game, also posting stories. So I'm glad they separated that for us, just for us.
Of course they did. That was the impetus of the scheduling change there. My sicko story that I guess I do tell every year, probably at this time, would be it started early with me. My dear mother, when the NFL draft was midweek, this is like a Tuesday NFL draft. We're talking like 1980 when I'm like 12, midday with Bob Lee and whomever else with, oh man, Norm Hitchkiss would be there and all sorts of characters back then. But my mom would let me stay home and watch from school and watch the NFL draft. Absolutely.
That's impressive.
Todd.
Yes. Well, way before those days, but yes.
Why did they fire
I
Todd
saved
only
my
to have?
to watch Price is Right. I didn't, I wasn't. Yeah.
They fired Todd only to have other Todds. It's like, what? We had Todd.
Now, see, I had a buddy who was such a draft. He called himself a draft Nick. He would come with a folder about that thick, just like a binder that he had been working on for months with draft information. And he was a pilot. And when he moved to Cincinnati, he would fly me to Cincinnati to watch the draft. When he lived in Mississippi, he flew me to Mississippi. He flew me all over the country to watch the NFL draft with him. And he would clear the house. He'd make all sorts of deals with the wife, take the kids the previous weekend, the weekend after. I'll do anything, but you clear the house for 3 days because I'm doing nothing but eating, drinking, and watching the draft. And I'll bring my buddy with me.
It's a holiday.
And now you have it being telecast on a couple of outlets, and I myself watch NFL Network because I feel that it is a little bit more of the advanced course compared to ESPN, which maybe does a little bit more of trying to reach the general audience.
Entertainment.
And I just had to get away from Chris Berman and all of his comments. I mean, back in the day, that was just too much.
I've always been a fan of Mel Kiper, so I also like Mayock and Rich Eisen, so I would be torn. But I have grown up with Mel Kiper. I can't say a bad thing about him. Nobody's 100%. The NFL is not 100%. So I don't care how often necessarily you miss or you hit or who you like or who you don't. I've always liked Mel, but I generally depends on who is hosting it, because like if Trey Wingo would be doing it, I'd be like, well, I'm gonna head off to the NFL Network here.
Now, see, last year it must have been some specific milestone. They always pay tribute late in the draft to Mel in some form, but last year was a specific milestone. Might have been 40 years or something beyond that. I think it was even beyond that. Maybe it was 45, and they did a pretty extensive tribute to Mel Kiper, and I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal.
He's an original guy. He's an originator. Like he has created an industry, and it's an industry that has supported a lot of people now.
Yeah, this guy was 15 years old, like getting as many, taping NFL games at home on an old VCR and like sending, 10,000 word documents to the Baltimore Colts and just craziness. Yeah, good stuff. So past Marvin Harrison Jr., Kevin, we'll start with you. What do we expect the pecking order to look like for the Buckeyes?
I think Mike Hall Jr. and the dog just waited until I took my mic off of mute to start squeaking the toy. Pet ownership, fantastic. I think Mike Hall Jr. is a late to more likely third round type of guy. And then I think that's about all you're going to have to worry about in the first 2 days of the draft, with Thursday being round 1, Friday being 2 and 3, and then Saturday being everybody else. I certainly like the linebackers both getting a serious look with Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. You can kind of jump around with everything else at that point. Cade Stover, I've seen him as a 5. I mean, I think it just kind of depends. I did see a bet put out by Sports Betting AG that we all know Brock Bowers is going to be the first tight end taken off the board. It was plus 1,200 for Cade Stover to be the second tight end taken off the board. There were 4 guys ahead of him, including somebody who was just plus 120. I think that after the linebackers, it kind of becomes a little bit of a crapshoot, in my opinion, of what you are going to have beyond that, I mean, Josh Proctor's played a lot of football, but has also dealt with a lot of injuries. Where does he fit in? I mean, obviously, Mayan Williams, the undervalue of running backs in the modern draft. He was somebody who missed the majority, the back end of his final season due to injury. But yeah, I think that the safe bet is Mike Hall will be the second Buckeye taken off the board, but you're going to have to wait till Friday and maybe later into Friday as we get into like the middle of the third round.
Yeah, that's kind of my inclination is Hall maybe second or third round, Stover third or fourth round, Eichenberg third, fourth, fifth round, and then Proctor 5, 6, 7, somewhere there. Steele Chambers possibly 6, 7. Hard to say. Just takes one team to bite on him. Mayan Williams, Xavier Johnson, Matthew Jones, whoever else I might be missing. Probably undrafted free agents. I think Williams, what he talked about at the combine was just how difficult his knee situation was, and he had cartilage that had to be replaced basically through a surgical procedure. So he is not and may not be ready for the start of preseason camp. So when you hear that, you just wonder who's going to take a flyer on him. But, probably sign as an undrafted free agent with the idea that, get him in and go from there. Because I think there is some value there. He showed some ability running the football when he was healthy. So just kind of want to see what happens with that.
So Xavier Johnson mentioned as a possible pick. I think he's probably a free agent, but also a guy that he's 4 different players on your 53-man roster. He can play receiver. He can play running back. He can do whatever you need on special teams. So I think I'd really like to see him link with the team and stay there because I think he has value in a number of ways. Plus, I don't know if we've ever covered a better dude than that guy, and stuck it out at Ohio State when he could have gone somewhere else and played, and was always accommodating and happy to talk. And it's one of those guys that you root for in the next level. And he's also going to be one of those guys that's successful beyond football just because of his makeup and his demeanor. So, but just an easy guy to root for.
I'm a sucker for Michael's ridiculousness. I just am. I'm waiting for some kind of NFL draft stat that Notre Dame has more 7th rounders than Ohio State since 2018 or something like that. Any angle that he can find, which of course Notre Dame always has a better wide receiver room than Ohio State. Michael, you're not breaking any news. No new ground here.
I did a piece with by the numbers over at Buckeye Huddle about the draft. It's something I do yearly, and it gets more difficult each year as I try to find a lot of different numbers, so it's not the same piece over and over and over again, but there is a little bit of overlap. I will give Notre Dame this. It does have the most players taken during the draft era, 525. Southern Cal has 523. Ohio State's 485, but just to show the trajectory of where programs are right now, over the last 10 seasons, Ohio State's had 78 players drafted, while Notre Dame has had 47 players drafted. And just for good measure, USC has had 40 drafted. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Mr. Campbell.
Harrison's going to be, I don't know if you guys can see this if I hold it up, a graphic from Fox Sports.
It's a phone.
It's a phone. I don't know if it's reading backwards or not, but Ohio State 91 with Harrison, and then USC 85 all-time first-round picks, Alabama 79, Notre Dame 70, and Miami 67. So Ohio State will extend its all-time record to 91 with Harrison on Thursday.
That's in my By the Numbers piece. You should really – Buckeye Huddle. It's a fantastic website. You should check it out. None of us have time to read anybody else's stuff. I don't even read Tony's stuff.
He doesn't.
Steve, we still have 40 minutes for you to read down the list to get to Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan. Go
51.
ahead. You have it. I have it in my piece, though.
Michigan's got 51. They're number
51.
7. 51. Speaking of 40 minutes, I'll just throw this little plug in there. Ryan Day sat down with Josh Pate from Late Kick on the 24/7 Sports platform for 41 minutes yesterday. We posted the interview, and He didn't talk about who's going to play starting quarterback or anything like that, but it was a lot of good stuff. So, yeah, a lot of good things there in the interview. And, again, it just reinforces the culture at Ohio State. I think a lot of the things that were discussed in the course of that interview. So, definitely would advise people to check that out.
All right. That should wrap it up for the NFL draft, kicking
Well,
off on Thursday.
Did you guys see the tweet put out by Adam Schefter from the hit rate on the
I
first
saw
round
that.
draft picks from
Yeah, it was
2000 2019? The hit rate being which players get their second contract with that same team. So first rounders, it's a 5-year deal, team option for the fifth, and then if they've done so well that they want to keep them, they re-sign them and get that second contract. But of these numbers, like of the 56 quarterbacks taken in the first round between 2000 and 2019, only 46% got a second contract with that same team. And that's middle of the road as in terms of doing the best. The best was center with 11 of 12, and then it goes down to offensive tackle at 59%, guards at 50%, and then everything else. Wide receiver, surprisingly, is the worst, or maybe not surprisingly. Of the 77 drafted in the first round over that span, only 21 got a second contract with their original team, and that's a percentage of 27% of the on the hit rate there. Tight end is 33%, and these are professionals who have teams of professionals helping them draft and make the right picks, and they still don't even get it right more than half the time. In fact, far less than half the time, it would appear. If that is your metric, if you choose to use that as a metric.
Hell, we all know scouts. We all know NFL scouts, and some of the ones I know, I don't know how they're employed. So, I mean, it all makes sense.
It's like, yep, these are the numbers I would suspect.
To me, it's a much easier evaluation at 22 years old than it was at 17 years old, trying to project these players to play major college football when they haven't filled out yet.
Well, and that's another study that we or somebody or Mark, perhaps you can do this summer, is the quarterbacks that sign with, say, the Power 5 schools or the Power 4 schools. What percentage of those end up starting at that school? Is it 16%? Is it like 1 of 6? Like what are the percentages there of the players, of the quarterbacks that you sign end up starting for you?
Yeah, and it has to be a lower percentage because presumably you're taking at least one a year. So there is going to be a certain amount of backlog. So when Tony said, says 16% or whatever, I mean, it's like, oh my God, that's so low. But, just based on
What's the best you can do? 50?
I mean, I think that's high. I mean, so I mean, that is very interesting. Maybe that can be we're going to do a study on this, an Urban Meyer led study or something like that. But
there needs to be a study.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be an investigation of that guy that hit JT Barrett's leg.
It was Connor Stallions, I bet.
Had to have been. It was all, yeah.
Connor Stallions with the lead pipe on the sideline.
Connor Galuli.
Allegedly.
That was his first act of espionage. Yes. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here. Voice of College Football. It's Wednesdays at 11 a.m. We missed a gem there, apparently, from Kevin. What was that?
I said he was emboldened with the success there. He was emboldened, and that he went on to more nefarious schemes and hijinks and capers and shenanigans.
Kevin's here, BuckeyeHuddle.com, and also the Big Me Podcast. Tony from Buckeye Huddle, and also Buckeye Weekly is the podcast on a regular basis right here on YouTube and your favorite audio platform. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts247 Sports. We go live every day, and we'll again today here at the Voice of College Football, and we just run through the transfer portal. That's all we do. We just go through the transfer portal, and we've got about 3 different sources. We just run through all the comings and goings, and the one that is driving me nuts are the players that left the school at the end of 2023, did nothing but tap the resources, drain the resources from said university and football program, wear their gear, work out in their facilities, eat their food, tie up their administrative costs with transfers and scholarships, and then they turn around and maybe have taken reps in spring practice from somebody who actually is going to play on the team in 2024. So that's my own personal rant on that, but we will be here at 3 p.m. with that. But the Ohio State, with all the flurry of activity everywhere else, Dallin Hayden chose Coach Prime, and the defensive back, Jenkins, went to UCF, I believe, back home. And besides that, all is quiet as of now. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, it's been crazy to think about that. That you figured there would be 4, 5, 6, 7 guys from this Ohio State team to jump into the portal at the end of spring practice. So far, only 2. Dallin Hayden did the week, that spring practice ended. And then Cedric Hawkins did after that. I think Hawkins is going, to Central Florida? Is that right? Or South Florida? One or the other. And then Central. And then obviously Hayden made some headlines saying he's going to go to Colorado, which is interesting. We'll see how that turns out for him. I think Colorado had a running back that went into the portal. So maybe it's just, one in, one out type thing out there for Dion, or in his case, 40 in, 40 out. But I don't know. I figured by now there'd be several linemen who are never going to play, who've never played at Ohio State, and who are never going to play at Ohio State that would have entered the portal. Maybe a few other guys, that would have. But so far, everyone's sticking and staying. As I made this joke, the movie Major League, the female owner says, "I think we're coddling these guys a bit too much." When you're getting 3 hot meals a day and a nice NIL check just to show up and, be practice fodder, I think that's probably good enough for some of these people. So, they got to do something to persuade some of these people that are, as I said, have never played and never going to play to free the grant. So there you go.
I did a quick count. I think there are 85.
Yep,
so
that's about what I got. Give or take.
They don't need to push anybody out, and it doesn't look like they're going to be bringing anybody in. I think that's also an indication of how they feel about some things, that you haven't seen them tied to anybody. But they're, as I've said before, like, I think now we were all expecting a bunch of names. I still have, I think, 8 stories I've written in preparation for guys hitting the portal, but I think a lot of this was put out by agents in terms of like, there's all our guys are going to be leaving, and the schools are also told this, hey, we're going to be leaving. And so a lot of these bigger names were kept, I think, from leaving by the NIL, and the negotiation ploy worked. I am a little surprised. I'm quite a bit surprised that there haven't been more Buckeyes leaving. But also a lot of the guys that leave are pushed out. And I know it's player empowerment and everybody thinks the players are just leaving whenever they want. A lot of these guys, most of these guys in the portal get pushed out. And right now, I agree with Steve. There are guys that are never going to play at Ohio State, but I guess they're doing more good than harm being part of the program right now. But we still got another almost a full week to go. But all of these players have been told the situation by now. They've all met with the coaches a week ago. They've had almost a week now to digest everything they've said, to talk with their families. So it is quite surprising that we have not seen more go. And then with Dallin Hayden going to Colorado, they were dead last in rushing last year, so there's an opportunity, but they were dead last in rushing last year. They're probably going to be close to that again this year. I mean, they averaged 2.3 yards per carry last year. Okay, good luck. Have fun with that. You might get the 250 carries you want, but it might end up being 600 yards.
Yeah, they went out and picked up Jordan Seaton out of the recruiting class. It's a roster that if you don't like it, just wait 12 months. It's going to be completely different next year. It's like Ohio weather. Wait 5 minutes. It'll be different. as for the portal, I mean, I think the guys were exactly right. You get guys who, well, all right, I guess I'm not going to play, but you know what? I am a football player at Ohio State, and I've got unlimited snacks at the Woody and cooked to order omelets and everything else, and I'm smiled upon by the co-eds and everything else, and who knows what the next destination may have. I mean, I may not be able to play there either, and may not have all of these other benefits. So I do think that sometimes a mere conversation with these players is not enough because they realize what they have right now, and short of changing their key code into the building, I mean, how are you getting them to move on at that point? If Ohio State needs 5 spots, 5 guys will magically end up in the portal or medically retired or whatever, what have you. Roster management is undefeated, and it will happen, and we're not going to see a case of where Ohio State's going to try and go in with 91 players at the start of fall to see what those penalties may be. But yeah, I am surprised that it has been such a small number at this point, but if you don't necessarily need the spots, maybe, we've always talked in the past of banking scholarships. Well, there's not really anybody they need. They should bank these scholarships, and we've completely done away with that idea. Maybe you're banking these roster spots at this point. Let's hold it for next year when we really need it, and not sit there and be like, well, we got to be at 85 to start and just kind of fill in. I don't know. I'm wildcatting with that opinion, but I am surprised it hasn't been more.
Did anyone get a chance to see Michigan's spring game?
Yeah. Watched it mostly live on the Saturday, and then rewatched it again on YouTube a couple days ago because
Rewatched it. Diligence. Wow.
Got to do Michigan Monday, babe.
Yep.
That's kind of sick.
There's not enough to do a Michigan Monday. Like that's the problem. You're rewatching. It's like, well, I mean, I've got some notes, but we spend every year talking about don't make broad judgments about the quarterbacks in the spring game. However, no. So it's like, what are you going to do about what you saw from Michigan? Alex Orji throws 100 miles an hour, like almost every single pass. He's athletic. I don't know that anybody else can unseat him. Jack Tuttle didn't go, but it feels like this is Alex Orji's team to me. And I saw somebody else say, we saw Alex Orji, we're not scared. The Alex Orji that Ohio State sees is going to be far different than the Alex Orji in April. That's going to be perhaps 11 starts under his belt by that time. So he's going to be a different player, but I don't know that anything you saw from the Michigan offense is overly concerning at this point.
Yeah, the Alex Orji that Ohio State will face may be a 37% passer. Tremendous runner, can't throw the ball. Jalen Milroe is 10 times the thrower right now of Alex Orji. It's the same situation as Tony said. Don't be making wild extrapolations based on what you see in a spring game, especially Michigan split its roster and had its maize and its blue teams. It feels gross even saying those colors, but there was nothing there that was like, oh my God, they got themselves a dude at this position. I mean, the couple of guys that I think that we know about were there. I mean, obviously strong at defensive tackle. Obviously, Colston Loveland is a dude. I think there's some mixed opinions about what Donovan Edwards can do, but he did the one move that he does better than anybody else, and that is come to a complete stop, bounce outside, and then run for a long time. So if you can cover that move, then you're going to be doing pretty well against Donovan Edwards, who otherwise looks pretty pedestrian. But no, this isn't going to be a team that's going to go 4-8. But with their win total being at 9.5, I am still mining Bitcoin to put down on the under on Michigan's win total, because that's free money to me. There is no way that they are going 10-2, 11-1, 12-0. Period. End of story. Clip it. Freezing cold takes. Old takes exposed. I don't give a shit. They're not winning. They're not going over. They're not. And if you
Boy.
want to clip it, you're going to have me saying bad words.
Kevin,
Just start saying a bunch of bad stuff right now, so you
Kevin.
can't do it.
It's like when I get all these stock offers when I'm scrolling through my Facebook, all these stock groups, and we know the secret, ingredients, and we've got the formula, and you're going to make, 58% the next month and all that other business. But man, who has this? Who's telling the truth? So Kevin, I would love if I kept track of all your predictions, and then you could show me, okay, 8-2 or whatever it is, then yeah, I'd say, but I'm going to give this team a little bit more credit that they've got an outside shot to. There's a reason it's 9.5. And I know they just won a national championship, but Vegas is pretty smart when it comes to these estimations.
Not on this one.
I was going to say, I understand that this is the Ohio State show, but why, Mr. Host, do you think, other than Vegas seeming to think that they can get there? Look at the schedule. Look at their schedule. Look at what they have returning. Look at quarterback. Their defensive tackles are not going to be able to put them on their extremely broad shoulders and carry them to the promised land. It's just not there. They don't have the runway that they did the previous 2 seasons with playing Manny, Mo, and Jack, the Pep Boys, in their non-conference schedule. They play a real non-conference schedule, and just before it comes in, Ohio State's non-conference schedule is garbage this year. I'm not going to deny a reality; it's garbage, but they're not going to get front loaded with 3 wins right off the bat. So I think 8-4 is the ceiling. I think 8-4 is the ceiling for this team.
I think their defense is still going to be lights out. They've got arguably the best cornerback in football. Their interior defensive line is going to be exceptional, as you mentioned.
No Rob
Their
Moore.
linebackers are probably the best in the conference, along with Iowa. Offensive line's not going to be an issue. I know Donovan Edwards. I guarantee he's going to show up for one game, and it's probably going to be a big game. He does that every year, but he's got to do that now like 12 or 14 times. So I get it, and I get the wide receivers don't scare anyone, but they do have arguably the best tight end in college football, and they're not going to roll out a quarterback there that's completely inept. This is not Iowa. They're not going to do that. It's going to be somebody that can get the job done. And if they rolled through this far and didn't go get somebody, then maybe it's Alex Orji. He is probably going to be the starting quarterback. I think it's about an 80% certainty at least that he's the starting quarterback.
But you said they were going to roll out somebody competent.
And we would have maybe made those same comments about Jalen Milroe after week 1 or week 2 of last season.
And
he got benched.
And honestly, Alabama kind of, scratched off the winning scratch-off ticket to get into the playoffs in the first place. An Alabama team that really should have lost to Auburn.
Sure.
The thing with Jalen Milroe is that at least Jalen Milroe has one throw in his repertoire, and it's the deep ball. So at least he's able to move the chains. Alex Orji, what can he throw? The swing pass? That's really, and even that, I watched some things that were not exactly right. So I don't see it. I understand, you talk about their linebackers, they go get Barnum from Maryland. They are reloading in certain positions that are, I think it's going to be impressive, but they also they had an incredible brain drain. And I may say that a little tongue in cheek, depending on how you felt about some of the Michigan coaches, but why is Wink Martindale suddenly going to be able to work for them now? Wink Martindale, who's been fired from many of the finest jobs in America.
Well, I would just say, Kevin, I am appalled. I am shocked. I could not disagree more about many things that you say. But with this thing, we We just recorded a Buckeye Weekly that I'll drop later today. I suggested maybe Michigan go get Arch Manning, like do something to go get Arch Manning and bring him into the fold to help your quarterback situation. But looking at the thing about Michigan's schedule, it looks daunting and it's a tough schedule, but you get Texas at home, you get USC at home, you get Oregon at home. Like your biggest road game is going to be Ohio State, and you're probably going to be favored at every other road venue. So if you can steal one of those home games against Texas, and USC is not even a steal. Like if you can steal one of those games against Texas or Oregon, then I think you're talking, that 9-3 can become 10-2 pretty quickly, and 10-2 can get you into playoffs. I also don't know how good a quarterback you need to be able to finish top 2 in the Big Ten, as we've seen over the years. So I need to see a lot more from Alex Orji. He is not, I think he's thrown one pass in his college career. He's going to have to do more than that, clearly. But what happens if Michigan beats Texas in week 2? Like imagine the narrative at that point when everybody's going to be jumping on the Michigan bandwagon.
Well, then they can claim the September Heisman once again, but it's not. I watched the Texas
Fulcier.
and while Texas was not exactly flawless, nobody's going to be flawless in their spring game. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see them being able to put up enough offense. Blake Corum ain't walking through that door. They don't have somebody that they can ride like that. Donovan Edwards, they can't do that. I mean, Kalal Mullings. I mean, what are they? I mean, I don't see. They're not going to be able to be this fight you in a phone booth, lunch pail, blue collar, station to station type of offense. I don't know what type of offense it's going to be. No, it's not going to be Iowa. No, I mean, let's be realistic here. I can sit there and speak with a little poetic license for the hell of it, but I'm not going to just spread just straight lies. I mean, it's not going to be the Iowa offense, but they're not going to be able to carry it through a full season. And to Tony's point about a lot of the big games being at Michigan Stadium, well, that's nice. You know where your locker room is. You know the one tunnel, the fight tunnel that you have to go down and fight your way out of it and everything else. But it's not like, it's not like Autzen. It's not like Happy Valley. It's not like some of the bigger, home field advantages out there. I mean, it's a giant hole in the ground. The sound just goes straight up and out. I mean, it's not overly loud compared to stadiums that are 25,000, 30,000 smaller in capacity that are built up more.
But Kevin, the 105,000 people shaking those keys at the opponent, they're shaking their keys and they're creating a jangle sound. That is intimidation in its purest form.
Those and pom-poms, but I know Michigan's not the only one to do pom-poms, and I've even seen them at Ohio State, and I cringe. No artificial noisemakers or things like that, please. I mean, this is college football, sir. We don't need that crap.
Clinga.
Yet with all that, no one has beaten them at home since 2019, right? Ohio State, 2020 season, everybody beat them. Okay.
So nobody has beaten them at home since Connor Stallions became an integral part of the game. Okay. All right. I mean, that crazy coincidence.
And several of the key players on that run of teams are no longer going to be there. And you have a first-year head coach who, while he beat Ohio State, I'm not taking that away. That suspension that Jim Harbaugh had, he was able to be in the facility 6.5 days a week to set everything up. Let's see what Sharon Moore does on his own. Let's just not act like they're missing a couple of players and all is going to be right. Basically, we sat there and we just threw everything in a cup and shook it up and threw it out on the table. Now we're going to have to see what the pieces are.
We will see it all play out, but I tend to group games together and say, okay, what are the odds that they win these games or those games? And like Tony, I'm looking at Texas, Oregon, and USC, and I think that they can navigate that at 2-1. And even if they lose in Columbus, I am not saying that. Hang on. I didn't say that they're going to cover this 9.5. I just said it's not ridiculous.
They're not going to go 2-1 against those teams. They're not. Oregon is going to boat race them. Oregon is going to boat race them. I know Bo Nix is gone. They just turn around. They go pick up Dylan Gabriel. They go and pick up a couple more big receivers. It's just a reloaded type of system. So it's going to be a horrible matchup because Oregon is going to have an offense. For a former Pac-12 team, it has a defense. I don't know how well that's going to translate to the Big Ten. So I don't see that one happening. And honestly, I've seen enough out of Miller Moss to think that he's going to be able to navigate enough of that situation that they're going to be able to do it. I know Alex Grinch plus Lincoln Riley seems to be a much more strong combination than Lincoln Riley plus Alex Grinch.
So this is something we talked about, and I'll ask all of you guys this. You mentioned breaking it down into segments. The first 6 games they play 6, and then they have a bye week. Fresno State, Texas, Arkansas State, USC, Minnesota, all at home. Then they're at Washington. What is the most likely record that they come out of there with?
I'm
your
on the
guys'
fence
opinion.
between 5-1 and 4-2.
4-2 tops. I think
Steve?
they take Washington. They lose the other 2. They lose to Texas. They lose to Oregon.
Yeah,
Oregon's not part of that.
Wait.
We're talking about the first 6.
Texas, it was Texas
USC.
Texas and SC. They lose both of those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 8-4 overall is probably the high watermark for them. Again, Kevin said it's more than just players on the field. It's, nobody even knows anybody else's name. I mean, it's just been a complete, mass exodus up there, players and coaches alike. I do like their defense, like everyone said, but you've also got to be able to score points to win in these games, and you're not going to hold all these teams to 15 points. So I don't know. It's gonna get ugly, I think.
I hope you're right, Kevin. I sincerely hope you're right. And I'm not claiming anything right now. I'll make a prediction before the season. But if somebody had a gun to my head right this second and I had to nail their record, I'd say 9-3. That would be my record.
8-4 tops. Print it. I hope you're right. They don't have enough on offense. I don't know how they're going to be able to do that. I really do not look at a staff and there's no hand me down from the Baltimore Ravens running the defense. You got a washed up coach who's bounced around and been passed around like a bad penny in Wink Martindale. We can talk about line and everything else, but they don't have a quarterback. If Tony's little thing about Arch Manning were to happen, I would certainly come back and reassess my numbers and everything else. And I'm not ready to say that Arch Manning is the next big thing, but Arch Manning is about 12 steps better than anything they have a quarterback right now. Period.
Well, let's see what Alex Orji could do against the Texas defense in the spring game first.
All right.
But I think we can all agree, just for Michael's benefit, that Notre Dame ain't worth a crap. Just seeing his long-ass tweets with emojis and all caps and stuff like that just angers me. I don't even read them, but I just get angry.
Way to encourage him to do it more. I mean, you don't know how to play this game, Kevin.
I just don't know how somebody with a functioning brain can take whatever chunk of history, the last 70 years, the last 20 years, whatever, and look at Ohio State and Notre Dame. And unless you are just completely trying to troll and upset people, as he is accomplishing, I guess, how you just ignore every fact that is meaningful in any way. Notre Dame cannot be compared to Ohio State in any way over the last 20 or 30 years.
You should make him pay a $50 super chat for admittance to any show if we're going to have to listen to this crap.
That's an idea right there. We'll see how dedicated he is.
I would just say, is it any different than cable news? No, it's not. Next topic. Steve, you're on mute.
124 minus 36. You have to be 88 years old. Just 88 years old.
I outlined this for Michigan fans again this morning to basically say, let's size this up once again, because they were coming up with all sorts of configurations. If you go back 47 years, then this, again, if you're under the age of 5, if we can have anybody that's in the chat that's under the age of 5, please raise your hand, then you can boast rivalry pride. You've got the bragging rights in the rivalry if you're under the age of 5. If you're over the age of 100, please raise your hand. And then I got all these responses. They all count. All the wins count. Because absolutely, they do. They all count exactly the same. I just personally don't care about what happened in 1903. I don't care. I've got to be like, it's got to be in the Pole era or post World War II or something in that range for me to care and start to care. And really more so in the 1950s, 60s, in that range. And Ohio State just crushes Michigan, not just in the head-to-head. They don't crush Michigan in the head-to-head, but every conceivable metric, the AP points, season rankings, major bowl wins, national championships, Big Ten championships. Yes, Michigan leads the series by 10. They won the first 14. You know, of course they lead the series by 10. Ohio State basically was playing club football when they first started playing Michigan.
I do think you're seeing also Michigan catching up in terms of probations. So that's going to be another metric for them that is going to be looking good.
Yeah, they should have a 2-0 lead in the recency probations going on there. All right. Kevin, where can we find you?
Right here. Oh,
angrily yelling at the computer.
Hey, I'm putting on a show. I don't know about you guys, but I'm an actor. I'm a showman.
Appreciated.
I'm just trying to keep people a little spicy right now. You can get me on Twitter /X, whatever the hell it's called, at Kevin_Noon. You can, of course, find me as well at BuckeyeHuddle.com. The Big Me Kickoff is at YouTube.com/Big Buckeye Huddle. I'm going to be recording an episode probably in a couple hours. Topics to be determined. I will do a little research on that. As for content over at Buckeye Huddle, I just dropped a piece on the draft by the numbers that came out yesterday, and I'm sure I'll probably have one more draft piece coming up before the draft kicks off on Thursday at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., something like that. I'll get it figured out before then.
What you got, Tony?
Just recorded a Buckeye Weekly talking about the Michigan spring game and some things like that, the quarterback situation. We also recorded one for tomorrow where Tom Orr and I went back and forth. We drafted, in honor of Marvin Harrison, 4 Ohio State receivers from history to pit against 5 Ohio State defensive backs, 2 corners, a nickel, a free safety, and a strong safety. So went back and forth drafting 9 players. And we'll drop that on Thursday. And BuckeyeHuddle.com, of course, dropped a story today about, I don't even remember. It was at like 5:30 this morning when I did it. But I'm also writing a story about Julian Slayen, freshman quarterback. Talked with his high school coach a couple of weeks ago. And so it's a long feature that I'm hoping to get done today, but maybe tomorrow. But I'll do my best to get that today. So you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
We'll remind everyone, if you just joined us in the last 10, 15, 20 minutes, you probably missed some of Kevin's 5 rants today. You probably only caught like 2. So you want to catch
Where the hell have you been?
Exactly. Where have you been? You got to catch all of them. So
like Pokemon. You
can always rewind, catch what you missed right here with about 180 on the line. Steve, what's going on there at Bucknuts?
Just trying to enjoy this quiet time, gearing up for the draft, working on some pre-writes and some different things to have things ready to go for the draft. And, It will be fun to watch Marvin Harrison on the main stage tomorrow. He's certainly earned it with all of his hard work. Not going to Detroit, but we'll have coverage of whatever he says up there. We've got some people, some boots on the ground up there that are going to help us out. So looking forward to that. And otherwise, just trying to stay warm here in balmy Columbus, where the high today is going to be about 53 degrees. So, yeah, we're ready for spring. Of course, it goes directly from winter to summer. They'll go straight from 50 to 80 when that day comes. But, patiently waiting for that day to come.
Folks, please smash the like button on the way out. We'll catch you back here most likely next Wednesday, but that's why you subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. For Steve, for Kevin, for Tony, guys, we appreciate you doing this again. Number 264 is in the books. We'll see you next week.